In a small, peaceful town surrounded by gentle hills and thick forests, there lived a man named John Harper. He was a single father who had poured all his love and energy into raising his daughter, Emily. She was the center of his world, bright, kind-hearted, and full of dreams for the future. To everyone who knew her, Emily seemed like the kind of person who lit up any room she entered. Her smile could warm even the coldest days, and her laughter was infectious. For John, she wasn't just his child. She was his reason to wake up every morning. John worked hard as a carpenter, crafting furniture with care and precision. Every piece he made carried a bit of his dedication, but nothing compared to the effort he put into being a good father. After Emily's mother passed away when Emily was just 5 years old, John vowed to give his daughter everything she needed: love, guidance, and stability. They weren't rich, but their home was always filled with warmth and laughter. On weekends, they'd go hiking in the nearby woods or bake cookies together in the kitchen. Life wasn't perfect, but it was happy. But happiness has a way of slipping through our fingers when we least expect it. One fateful evening, everything changed forever. Emily had been complaining about feeling unusually tired over the past few days, but neither she nor John thought much of it. Young people often brushed off such symptoms as stress or lack of sleep. That night, however, something felt different. Emily collapsed while helping John clean up after dinner. Panicked, John called an ambulance, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Doctors later explained that Emily had suffered from an undiagnosed heart condition, a silent killer that gave no warning until it was too late. The news hit John like a freight train. His vibrant, lively daughter was gone, leaving behind an empty void that nothing could fill. Days turned into weeks, but the pain didn't ease. If anything, it grew sharper with each passing moment. Friends and family tried to comfort him, offering words of sympathy and support, but none of it helped. How could it? No amount of kind words or shared meals could bring Emily back. The house, once buzzing with life, now felt suffocatingly quiet. Even the simplest tasks like making coffee in the morning became unbearable reminders of her absence. As the initial shock began to wear off, John found himself consumed by questions. Why hadn't anyone noticed the signs earlier? Could something have been done to save her? These thoughts gnawed at him day and night, keeping him awake long after the rest of the world had fallen asleep. He replayed every memory, searching for clues he might have missed. Had Emily mentioned chest pains, shortness of breath, anything at all? But no matter how many times he sifted through the past, he couldn't find answers. All he was left with was a deep sense of helplessness and regret. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't follow rules or timelines. Some days John managed to get out of bed and function like a normal person. Other days he couldn't muster the strength to leave his bedroom. He stopped taking jobs, stopped answering calls, and withdrew from the community that had once been so important to him. People understood, at least they tried to, but they couldn't truly comprehend the depth of his despair. Losing a child is one of the most devastating experiences anyone can endure, and John was drowning in it. One particularly lonely night, unable to sleep, John sat alone in his dimly lit living room. Surrounding him were photographs of Emily, smiling, on her first day of school, blowing out candles on her birthday cake, posing proudly beside a handmade birdhouse she'd built with her dad. Each picture was a punch to the gut, reminding him of what he had lost. Desperate for distraction, he picked up his phone and started scrolling through social media. Eventually, he stumbled upon an article about near-death experiences. The stories fascinated him. Some people claimed they saw bright lights or heard voices calling them back. Others described meeting deceased loved ones during moments of crisis. While John had never believed in anything supernatural before, the idea intrigued him. What if Emily wasn't truly gone? What if there was some truth to these accounts? His rational mind told him it was nonsense, but his broken heart clung to the possibility. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to death than what science could explain. This thought lingered in his mind long after he set the phone down. At first, it seemed absurd, even dangerous, to entertain such ideas. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. If there was even the slightest chance that Emily still existed somewhere beyond this world, wouldn't it be worth exploring? The desire for closure, or perhaps just the need to feel closer to her again, began to take root in his mind. And from that seed of hope, a plan started to form. A plan that would test the limits of logic, morality, and sanity itself. What John didn't realize at the time was that this decision would change his life forever. Little did he know that in his quest for answers, he would uncover something far greater and far stranger than he ever imagined possible. The idea that had taken root in John's mind refused to let go. It lingered like a shadow, haunting his thoughts during the day and invading his dreams at night. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Emily's passing than what doctors had explained. Was she truly gone? Or was there something beyond this life that he didn't understand? The stories about near-death experiences he had read online kept replaying in his head. They weren't just random anecdotes. They felt like whispers of hope in a world that suddenly seemed cold and empty. John wasn't a religious man, nor did he. He believed in ghosts or spirits before Emily's death. But now, faced with an unbearable loss, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew. What if those stories were true? What if there was a way to reach out to Emily, even for just a moment? These questions consumed him, growing louder with each passing day. He needed to know if she was okay, if she was somewhere peaceful, somewhere happy. And so, slowly but surely, an unconventional idea began to take shape. At first, the thought terrified him. Placing a camera inside Emily's coffin sounded absurd, almost disrespectful. Who does something like that? Yet, as irrational as it seemed, the idea wouldn't leave him alone. Every time he tried to dismiss it, another voice in his mind argued back, "What if it works? What if you see something, anything, that proves she's still here, in some form?" The possibility, however slim, was enough to keep him hooked. After all, what did he have to lose? His heart was already broken. Nothing could hurt him more than the pain he was already carrying. Determined to explore this strange plan, John began researching cameras. He spent hours online, scrolling through reviews and specifications, trying to find one that would suit his needs. It had to be small enough to fit discreetly inside the coffin, durable enough to withstand burial conditions, and capable of recording continuously for days without interruption. Most importantly, it had to work in complete darkness. This last requirement proved challenging, but after much deliberation, he settled on a waterproof, motion-activated camera designed for extreme environments. It wasn't cheap, but John didn't care. Money meant nothing to him anymore. Once the camera arrived, John stared at the tiny device in his hands, feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, he felt guilty, as though he was tampering with something sacred. On the other hand, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this little gadget would provide the answers he so desperately sought. Maybe it would show him something extraordinary, something that would ease the ache in his chest. Or maybe it wouldn't capture anything at all. That thought scared him almost as much as the idea of seeing something supernatural. To prepare, John tested the camera multiple times. He placed it in dark rooms, buried it in dirt-filled containers, and even submerged it in water to ensure it worked under pressure. Each test brought a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Would it hold up? Would it fail him when it mattered most? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he pushed forward, determined not to leave anything to chance. By the time he was satisfied with its performance, the day of Emily's funeral was fast approaching. As the date drew nearer, John wrestled with doubts. Was he being selfish? Was he crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed? He imagined how others might react if they found out what he planned to do. Friends and family would call him crazy, maybe even accuse him of disrespecting Emily's memory. But deep down, he convinced himself that this wasn't about them. It was about him and Emily. He owed it to her to try, no matter how bizarre it seemed. She deserved closure, and so did he. On the morning of the funeral, John woke up with a heavy heart. The sky outside was overcast, matching the gloom that hung over the town. He dressed quietly, his movements mechanical, as though his body was functioning on autopilot. As he prepared to leave the house, he slipped the camera into his pocket, its weight both comforting and unsettling. He took a final glance at the framed photo of Emily on the mantelpiece, a picture of her smiling brightly on her last birthday, and whispered, "I'm sorry if this is wrong, sweetheart. I just need to know." When he arrived at the funeral, home, the air was thick with sorrow. Friends, neighbors, and distant relatives gathered to pay their respects, their faces etched with grief. The casket sat open in the center of the room, surrounded by flowers and candles. Emily looked peaceful inside, her hands folded gently across her chest. To everyone else, she appeared to be sleeping. But to John, the sight was unbearable. She wasn't sleeping, she was gone. Throughout the service, John moved like a ghost among the living. He shook hands, accepted condolences, and nodded politely, but his mind was elsewhere. All he could think about was the camera hidden in his pocket. When the time came to close the casket, he excused himself briefly, stepping away from the crowd. His palms were sweaty, his heart racing as he approached the coffin. With trembling fingers, he carefully tucked the camera beneath the lining, ensuring it was secure and out of sight. No one noticed. No one suspected. Returning to his seat, John exhaled deeply, his emotions swirling like a storm. Relief washed over him momentarily. He had done it. But then guilt crept in, gnawing at the edges of his conscience. Had he violated Emily's dignity? Or was this act, however unusual, an expression of love? He didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't turn back now. The camera was in place, and soon it would record whatever lay ahead. As the service concluded and the casket was sealed shut, John felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Dread because he was saying goodbye to his daughter forever, or so it seemed. Anticipation because in 3 days' time he would return to retrieve the camera and uncover the truth. Whatever the outcome, he told himself, it would be worth it. For better or worse, he was about to step into uncharted territory, a journey fueled by grief, hope, and an unshakable desire to reconnect with the one person who meant everything to him. Little did John realize that this decision would lead him down a path far stranger and more profound than anything he could have imagined. The answers he sought were waiting for him, but they would come at a price. The days following Emily's funeral felt like a blur to John. Each hour dragged on endlessly, weighed down by the anticipation of what lay ahead. He couldn't focus on anything, not work, not conversations with friends, not even the simplest tasks around the house. His mind was consumed by one thing, the camera buried with Emily. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined it sitting there in the darkness of the coffin, recording everything, or perhaps nothing at all. The uncertainty gnawed at him, keeping him awake long into the night. John tried to distract himself, but nothing worked. He flipped through old photo albums, hoping to find comfort in memories of happier times. Instead, each picture only deepened his longing for Emily. He went for walks in the woods they used to explore together, but the familiar trails now felt foreign and lonely without her laughter echoing beside him. Even cooking, the one activity that usually brought him solace, failed to lift his spirits. The meals tasted bland, meaningless, as though the joy had been drained from even the smallest pleasures in life. What made it worse was the guilt. No matter how hard he tried to justify his actions, the weight of what he'd done pressed heavily on his conscience. Had he crossed a line? Was placing a camera in his daughter's coffin an act of love or an invasion of her final resting place? These questions haunted him, turning over and over in his mind like stones in a riverbed. He replayed the moment when he'd slipped the camera beneath the lining of the casket, wondering if anyone had noticed, even subconsciously, that something wasn't right. But no one had said a word. Everyone seemed too wrapped up in their own grief to pay attention to such details. To make matters worse, John began second-guessing whether the camera would even work. What if it malfunctioned underground? What if the pressure or moisture damaged it beyond repair? He had tested it thoroughly before the funeral, but real-world conditions were unpredictable. Buried 6 feet under, surrounded by damp soil and cold metal, could the device truly hold up? And even if it did, what would it capture? Darkness, silence, or something else entirely? These thoughts tormented him, oscillating between hope and despair. On some level, John knew that retrieving the camera might not bring him the answers he craved. It was possible, likely even, that the footage would show nothing more than the interior of the coffin. Yet, despite the odds, he clung to the sliver of hope that remained. Maybe, just maybe, he would see something extraordinary, something that would prove Emily wasn't truly gone, that she existed somewhere beyond this world watching over him. That hope, however fragile, kept him going. Finally, the 3rd day arrived. By then, John was a wreck. His hands trembled constantly, and his stomach churned with anxiety. He hadn't eaten properly in days, surviving on coffee and scraps of toast. Sleep eluded him, and when it came, it was plagued by vivid dreams of Emily calling out to him from the darkness. Each dream left him more exhausted than the last, yet also more determined to uncover the truth. That evening, after the sun had set and the town fell silent, John prepared for his late-night expedition. He gathered tools, a shovel, gloves, a flashlight, and packed them into his car. His heart pounded as he drove to the cemetery, each mile bringing him closer to the moment of truth. The road stretched out before him, lined with towering trees whose branches swayed gently in the breeze. Normally, he found comfort in the quiet beauty of the countryside, but tonight, the shadows seemed darker, the silence heavier. When he reached the cemetery gates, John parked his car discreetly and stepped out into the cool night air. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale light over the rows of graves. He moved cautiously, careful not to disturb the peace of the sleeping town. As he approached Emily's grave, his breath caught in his throat. A small bouquet of flowers lay atop, the freshly turned earth, placed there by someone who cared deeply about her. For a moment, John hesitated, overwhelmed by emotion. Then, steeling himself, he began to dig. Each strike of the shovel echoed loudly in the stillness, making him wince. He worked quickly, driven by a mix of urgency and dread. Dirt flew in every direction, piling up around him as he carved deeper into the ground. Sweat dripped down his face despite the chill in the air, and his muscles ached from the effort. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Not until he reached the casket. After what felt like hours, but was likely no more than 20 minutes, he struck wood. His heart leapt into his throat as he brushed away the remaining soil, revealing the polished surface of the coffin. For a moment, he simply stared at it, frozen by a flood of emotions. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. Taking a deep breath, he pried open the lid, his hands trembling so violently that he nearly dropped his flashlight. Inside, everything looked exactly as it had during the funeral. Emily lay peacefully, her features serene and untouched by decay. Seeing her again was both comforting and heartbreaking. Tears welled up in John's eyes as he whispered, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I just needed to know you're okay." With great care, he reached beneath the lining of the casket and retrieved the camera. It was intact, its tiny lens staring blankly back at him. Clutching the device tightly, John closed the coffin and began refilling the grave. The task felt surreal, almost dreamlike, as though he were participating in some strange ritual. Once the dirt was back in place, he smoothed it over as best he could, ensuring it looked undisturbed. Then, with a final glance at the headstone bearing Emily's name, he turned and walked away. Back home, John sat alone in his dimly lit living room, the camera cradled in his lap like a precious artifact. His pulse raced as he connected it to his computer, his fingers fumbling nervously with the cables. When the screen finally flickered to life, displaying the first frames of footage, his breath hitched. At first, all he saw was darkness, the interior of the sealed casket. But then faint sounds began to emerge. The muffled voices of mourners during the burial, the scrape of dirt hitting the lid, the eventual silence of the grave settling into place. John leaned closer, his eyes glued to the screen. Nothing unusual appeared at first, just the blackness of the coffin and the occasional glint of reflected light. But as the hours ticked by, something strange began to happen. Around the 6-hour mark, a faint glow emerged on the screen. It started as a soft shimmer, barely noticeable against the dark background. Then gradually it grew brighter, illuminating the edges of the coffin. John's heart skipped a beat. Was this a trick of the camera? A reflection of some sort? Or was it something else entirely? As the glow intensified, shadows began to move across the frame. They weren't random shapes. They were deliberate, almost human-like figures shifting in and out of view. John froze, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The movements were subtle but undeniable. Someone, or something, was there with Emily. His chest tightened as he realized the implications. Could these be spirits? Angels? Or merely figments of his imagination projected onto the footage? Determined to find out, John kept watching. The next few minutes were filled with eerie stillness, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. Then suddenly, the whispers began. Soft, indistinct voices overlapped one another, growing louder and clearer with each passing second. John adjusted the volume, straining to make sense of the words. Some sounded distant, others close, as though they were speaking directly to him. And then, amidst the cacophony, he heard it, a voice he recognized instantly. Dad. It was Emily. Her voice was unmistakable, gentle and soothing, just as he remembered it. She continued, "I'm okay. Don't worry anymore." Tears streamed down John's face as he listened to her words. In that moment, all his doubts, fears, and guilt melted away. Whatever this phenomenon was, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Emily was safe, happy, and at peace. She wasn't suffering or lost. She was somewhere beautiful, surrounded by love and light. And she had come back, not to haunt him, but to reassure him. For the first time since her death, John felt a profound sense of calm wash over him. The pain of losing her hadn't disappeared, but it was tempered by the knowledge that she was okay. More than that, he now had proof that death wasn't the end, that there was something beyond this life, something mysterious and wonderful. Little did he know, this discovery would change not only his life but the lives of countless others, who would soon hear his story. As the footage continued to play on his computer screen, John felt as though he had stepped into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The glowing light and moving shadows inside Emily's coffin were unlike anything he had ever seen before. His mind raced to make sense of it, but logic seemed to crumble under the weight of what was unfolding in front of him. Each frame of the video pulled him deeper into a realm that defied explanation, leaving him both awestruck and terrified. The glow grew brighter, almost pulsating, as if alive. It wasn't harsh or blinding like sunlight. Instead, it carried a soft, ethereal quality, casting an otherworldly hue over the interior of the casket. Shadows danced along the edges of the frame, shifting and swirling in patterns that didn't follow any natural laws. They weren't random. They moved with purpose, forming shapes that resembled silhouettes of people. Some stood still while others appeared to walk or gesture, their forms flickering in and out of focus. John leaned closer to the screen, his breath shallow, as though afraid even the slightest movement might disrupt whatever was happening. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs that filled the silence like a distant echo. At first they were faint, barely audible above the hum of his computer speakers. But as John adjusted the volume, the voices became clearer, overlapping one another in a symphony of sound. Some spoke in hushed tones, while others laughed gently, creating an atmosphere that was both eerie and comforting. He strained to pick out individual words, his heart pounding as snippets of phrases began to emerge. "We're here," one voice said, its tone soothing yet unfamiliar. She's safe now, another added, followed by what sounded like a sigh of relief. John's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of his desk. These weren't just random noises. They were deliberate, meaningful. And then, amidst the chorus of voices, he heard it, again, Emily's voice. Clearer this time, unmistakable. "Dad," she whispered, her tone tender and calm. "Don't worry anymore." Her words hit him like a tidal wave, flooding him with emotions he couldn't contain. Tears streamed down his face as he listened intently, clinging to every syllable. She went on, her voice steady and reassuring. "I'm okay. I'm happy here. Please don't be sad for me." For a moment, John forgot how to breathe. His chest tightened. Not from grief this time, but from sheer disbelief mixed with overwhelming relief. Was this real? Or was his mind playing tricks on him, conjuring up what he so desperately wanted to hear? He replayed the segment several times, scrutinizing every detail. The audio was clear, the timing precise. It wasn't some glitch or distortion. This was Emily, speaking directly to him from beyond the grave. But the footage didn't stop there. After her message, the glow intensified, filling the entire frame with a radiant light. The shadows dissolved into the brilliance, merging seamlessly until all that remained was pure illumination. It was as though the camera itself had been transported to another dimension, a place where darkness no longer existed. John stared at the screen, transfixed, unable to look away. For a fleeting moment, he thought he saw figures standing within the light, their outlines blurred but distinctly human. Were these spirits? Angels? Or something else entirely? As the video progressed, the light began to fade, gradually giving way to the familiar darkness of the coffin once more. The transition felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if the presence that had revealed itself was bidding farewell. When the final frame played, showing nothing but the empty interior of the casket, John sat back in his chair, utterly stunned. His mind reeled, trying to process everything he had just witnessed. He replayed the footage multiple times, each viewing bringing new details to light. Every shadow, every whisper, every flicker of movement seemed significant, as though part of a larger narrative waiting to be deciphered. Questions swirled in his head. Who or what were those figures? Why had they chosen to reveal themselves to him? And most importantly, why had Emily reached out? Despite the answers the footage provided, it also raised countless new mysteries. John knew he couldn't keep this discovery to himself, not entirely. He needed someone to share it with, someone who could help him make sense of it all. But who could he trust? Who would believe him without dismissing him as delusional or unhinged? His thoughts turned to Sarah, his oldest and closest friend. They had known each other since childhood, and though their lives had taken different paths over the years, they had always remained connected. Sarah had been devastated by Emily's death, attending the funeral and offering support whenever she could. If anyone would understand and perhaps even validate what he had experienced, it was her. The next morning, after hours of restless tossing and turning, John called Sarah. His voice cracked with emotion as he explained that he needed to show her something important. Though hesitant at first, Sarah agreed to come over later that day. When she arrived, John greeted her with a nervous smile, ushering her into the living room. He handed her a cup of tea and took a deep breath before launching into his story. First, Sarah listened skeptically, raising an eyebrow when John mentioned the camera in the coffin. "You did what?" she asked, her tone equal parts disbelief and concern. But as he recounted the events leading up to the discovery of the footage, her expression softened. By the time he finished explaining, she looked thoughtful rather than judgmental. "Show me," she said simply. John nodded and set up the laptop on the coffee table. Together they watched the video in silence, Sarah's eyes widening as the strange phenomena unfolded on screen. When Emily's voice came through the speakers, Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Her reaction mirrored John's own when he had first seen it: shock, awe, and a hint of fear. When the video ended, neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. This is incredible," she murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. I don't know what to say. Do you think it's real? It has to be, John replied firmly. I mean, look at it. Listen to her voice. That's Emily. There's no denying it. Sarah nodded slowly, still processing what she had seen. If this is true, if this is really happening, then it changes everything we know about life and death. They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the implications of the footage, bouncing ideas off each other and speculating about what it all meant. Sarah encouraged John to consider sharing it with others, suggesting that it might bring comfort to those grieving the loss of loved ones. But John hesitated. Sharing such a personal and controversial discovery came with risks: criticism, ridicule, maybe even legal consequences. Could he handle the scrutiny? More importantly, was he ready to let go of the secret bond he shared with Emily? By the end of their conversation, John had made up his mind. Whatever happened next, he owed it to Emily and to himself to share the truth. Whether people believed him or not, the footage was undeniable proof that there was more to life than met the eye. And if it helped even one person find peace in the wake of unimaginable loss, then it would be worth it. Little did John realize, however, that sharing the video would spark debates far beyond anything he could have anticipated. The journey ahead would test his resolve, challenge his beliefs, and force him to confront questions he never imagined asking. But for now, sitting beside Sarah in the quiet warmth of his living room, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace. Emily had spoken to him, assuring him that she was okay. And for the first time since her passing, John felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for himself, but for everyone searching for answers in the face of loss. After the initial shock of watching the footage with Sarah began to settle, John found himself grappling with a new set of emotions. The relief he had felt upon hearing Emily's voice was undeniable. It was as though a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time since her passing, he could breathe a little easier. But now, faced with the decision of what to do next, doubt crept back in. Sharing the video with others meant stepping into uncharted territory, exposing himself to judgment and skepticism. Yet keeping it private felt like burying the truth all over again, something he wasn't sure he could live with. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, urged him to think carefully about his next steps. This isn't just your story anymore, she said gently. If what we saw is real, and I believe it is, it could change how people think about death. It could give hope to so many who are struggling with grief. Her words resonated deeply. With John. He knew she was right. This discovery had the potential to touch lives far beyond his own. Still, the idea of putting himself and Emily's memory in the public eye terrified him. What if people dismissed the footage as fake? What if they accused him of exploiting his daughter's death for attention? These fears gnawed at him, but they were outweighed by the possibility that sharing the video might help others find peace. Determined to move forward, John spent the next few days preparing. He copied the footage onto a secure external drive and backed it up multiple times, ensuring it wouldn't be lost or tampered with. Then he wrote a detailed account of everything that had led him to place the camera in Emily's coffin. The grief, the desperation, the hope. He wanted people to understand why he had done it, to see that this wasn't some reckless act, but rather a father's attempt to reconnect with his child. When he finally uploaded the video online, along with his written explanation, he braced himself for the storm of reactions that would inevitably follow. Within hours, the internet exploded. The video spread like wildfire, shared across social media platforms, news outlets, and forums dedicated to paranormal phenomena. Comments poured in from all corners of the globe, ranging from heartfelt messages of gratitude to scathing accusations of fraud. Some viewers were deeply moved by the footage, claiming it brought them comfort during their own periods of loss. One woman wrote, "I lost my son 2 years ago, and I've never stopped wondering if he's okay. This gives me hope that he's somewhere safe, somewhere happy." Another commenter shared, "Thank you for having the courage to share this. It's proof that love transcends even death. But not everyone responded positively. Skeptics dissected the video frame by frame, searching for evidence of tampering or special effects. Some argued that the glowing light and moving shadows could easily have been created using editing software. Others dismissed the voices as audio manipulation or white noise interpreted through wishful thinking. A few even accused John of staging the entire thing as a publicity stunt. Despite the backlash, John remained steadfast. He understood that not everyone would believe him, and he didn't expect them to. What mattered most was that the video resonated with those who needed it most: the grieving mothers, fathers, siblings, and friends who clung to the hope that their loved ones weren't truly gone. The controversy surrounding the footage quickly caught the attention of local news stations, which led to national coverage. Reporters bombarded John with interview requests, eager to hear his side of the story. At first he declined, wanting to avoid further scrutiny. But after much thought and encouragement from Sarah, he agreed to sit down with one journalist, whose approach seemed genuine and respectful. During the interview, John spoke openly about his journey, the pain of losing Emily, the despair that followed, and the unconventional decision to place a camera in her coffin. He admitted that he hadn't known what to expect when he retrieved the footage, let alone imagine the impact it would have on others. When asked whether he regretted his actions, he shook his head firmly. "No," he said. "I did it because I needed answers. And while I know not everyone will believe me, I stand by what I saw. That was Emily speaking to me. I feel her presence every time I watch the video." The interview aired late one evening, drawing millions of viewers. Many were struck by John's sincerity and vulnerability. Even some skeptics admitted that his demeanor made it hard to dismiss the footage outright. The segment ended with John issuing a simple plea. "If my story helps even one person find peace, then it was worth it." As the days turned into weeks, the debate raged on. Religious leaders weighed in, debating the moral implications of tampering with the dead. Some praised John's bravery, calling it an act of faith and love. Others condemned him, arguing that such actions violated sacred boundaries. Meanwhile, scientists and paranormal researchers clamored to analyze the footage, hoping to uncover definitive proof of its authenticity, or lack thereof. Through it all, John tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. He returned to work, albeit part-time, and reconnected with friends and neighbors who had drifted away during his period of isolation. People treated him differently now, some with admiration, others with suspicion, but he didn't let it bother him. His focus remained on honoring Emily's memory and using the experience to help others navigate their grief. One day, while scrolling through comments on the video, John came across a message that stopped him in his tracks. It was from a young woman named Clara, who revealed that she had recently lost her fiancé in a car accident. "Your video saved me," she wrote. "I was ready to give up, but hearing Emily's voice reminded me that love doesn't end with death. Thank you for sharing your story." Tears welled up in John's eyes as he read her words. In that moment, he realized that the risks he had taken, the sleepless nights, the emotional turmoil, the public scrutiny, had been worth it. Whatever doubts or criticisms lingered, they paled in comparison to the hope and healing his actions had brought to others. Still, John couldn't shake the feeling that the journey wasn't over yet. The footage had opened doors to questions he hadn't anticipated, questions about life, death, and the mysteries that lie beyond. He began researching near-death experiences more deeply, connecting with experts and survivors who claimed to have crossed into another realm. Their stories only reinforced his belief that there was more to existence than what science could explain. At the same time, he started attending support groups for bereaved families, where he shared his experience and listened to theirs. Hearing their struggles reminded him of his own darkest days, but it also gave him purpose. By speaking openly about his loss and the unconventional path he had taken to find closure, he hoped to inspire others to seek their own answers, however unconventional they might seem. As the months passed, the fervor surrounding the video gradually subsided. Life in the small town returned to its usual rhythm, though whispers of John's story lingered in conversations at the grocery store and coffee shop. For John, the quiet moments became precious once again. Sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he allowed himself to reflect on how far he had come. He still missed Emily desperately, and he always would, but the ache in his chest had softened, replaced by a sense of peace he hadn't thought possible. Knowing that she was okay, and that her voice had reached others in need, gave him strength. She wasn't truly gone. She lived on in the hearts of those she touched, including his own. Little did John realize, however, that the ripple effects of his decision would continue to unfold in unexpected ways. The video had sparked a global conversation about life after death, inspiring researchers, spiritual seekers, and everyday people to explore the unknown. And though John preferred to stay out of the spotlight, he couldn't deny the role he had played in igniting that spark. For now, he focused on living each day with gratitude, cherishing the memories of Emily while embracing the beauty of the present. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, John felt ready to face it, one step at a time.